Negotiations like this are conducted as a matter of high diplomacy. And essentially, although the law does form a backdrop and will be taken into account by the players, ultimately, whatever they agree is a matter for their sovereign choices.
So what is the legal status of those territories currently occupied by Russia under international law?
The territories that are under Russian occupation have the status of being what we call belligerent occupation. That is to say, there is a state of war, a state of armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In the course of that conflict, Russia has taken control of some parts of Ukrainian territory and has those parts of Ukrainian territory under effective Russian control. That means that Russia is an occupier from the point of view of international law. It means that there are certain specific obligations that are entailed for Russia under, in particular, the Fourth Geneva Convention, which relates to the occupation of territory. And it means that Russia has no automatic claim or title to that territory simply by virtue of occupying it. It's a wartime occupation. It does not change the legal status of the territory. The legal status of the occupied territory is that it remains Ukrainian territory.
Now, if indeed Kyiv was to give up territory, and of course at this point in time there's no sign of that, but with that in mind, from the perspective of international law, is territorial concession under pressure or force actually seen as being legitimate?
No, it is not. Whilst it is always open to a state, and this may sound a little bit strange to some viewers, but whilst it is always open to a state to give up some territory or to cede some territory to another state, whether in exchange for some kind of compensation or as part of a peace settlement at the end of a conflict, that is a sovereign decision of the state concerned. However, it is an important rule of international law that that must not be procured by force or by coercion. If a state is coerced into giving up territory, even if it is dressed up in the form of, let's say, a peace treaty, as may be eventually under discussion between Russia and Ukraine, if there is an element of force or coercion in any Ukrainian decision, for example, to give up some territory, then that would render it null and void under international law. And that is because there is a treaty, the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which provides, among other things, that a treaty procured by force or by coercion is invalid under international law.
And what consequences are there as a result?
Well, the consequences, as always in international law, can be rather difficult to predict because they are very much dependent on what states are willing to do about it. The most immediate consequence, I would say, comes at the level of international diplomacy in terms of the United Nations and how states in the United Nations express their views. The principal way of doing that would probably be to pass a resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations by which states would refuse to recognize the acquisition of territory by Russia in this case. And you may recall that that was in fact already done back in 2014 when Russia occupied Crimea. Very quickly, there was a resolution procured with the support of 100 or slightly more states in the General Assembly, so a majority of the world community in the UN, that clearly said that the acquisition of the territory by Russia was invalid, had no effect in international law, and was null and void, and so is not recognized. And this is just a general duty of non-recognition, essentially, for the consequences of the illegal use of force.
So given what you've just been saying, could a negotiated settlement that involves any form of territorial exchanges ever be seen to be legally valid?
I think that would be problematic because of the imbalance of power between Russia and Ukraine in this case. Although it is possible to conceive of a situation where Ukraine could voluntarily decide to give up some of its territory, it would be rather hard because of the actual situation on the battlefield and also the wider geopolitical situation between Russia and Ukraine and their respective strengths. It would be rather hard to see that as having been procured by anything other than a form of coercion or extreme pressure. So I think the difficulty in seeing that as valid would be fairly evident in that kind of case.
Dr. Terns, thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much for having me on the programme. Goodbye.